There's a white powder sitting on a shelf in almost every hardware store in America that can silently wipe out an entire termite colony for less than $5. And the most unsettling part? You've probably walked past it dozens of times without ever realizing what it can actually do. Because right now, while you're watching this, termites could already be inside your home quietly chewing through wood, weakening the structure, and causing damage that most homeowners don't notice until it's too late. And in the United States alone, termite damage costs over $5 billion every single year, making it one of the most expensive hidden threats to your home. But here's where things start to feel off. Because the solution to this problem, the kind of solution that doesn't require a $3,000 treatment, doesn't lock you into annual contracts, and doesn't need constant reapplication, has been sitting in plain sight for decades. It doesn't expire. It doesn't lose potency indoors. And termites don't develop resistance to it. Not in 10 years. Not in 50. So let me ask you something directly. If something this cheap, this accessible, and this effective really exists, why haven't you been told about it? Why isn't it the first thing every pest control company recommends? Why doesn't it show up in the ads? The inspections, or the professional solutions you're told to trust? Because the truth is, this isn't just a story about termite control. It's a story about what happens when a simple, low-cost solution threatens a multi-billion-dollar industry built on recurring revenue. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. But before we go any further, there's one detail you need to understand first, because the way this powder actually works is nothing like what you've been told about traditional termite treatments. What you're looking at isn't rare. It isn't restricted, and it's definitely not new. It's a simple white powder called boric acid, and the truth is, you've probably seen it before. Sitting quietly on a shelf in a hardware store, maybe near pest control products, maybe near cleaning supplies, completely unremarkable. And that's exactly why you ignored it. Because nothing about it looks powerful. Nothing about it suggests that this could be one of the most effective termite control solutions ever discovered. No aggressive branding. No warning label screaming danger. No $3 000 service tag attached to it. Just a plain, low-cost mineral, usually priced between $3 to $5 per pound. But here's where things start to shift. This isn't some experimental chemical. This isn't a new breakthrough being pushed online. Boric acid has been studied, tested, and used for decades, not just in the United States, but across multiple countries and industries. It's found naturally in soil, in rock formations, even in certain hot springs, and in 1948, it was officially registered in the U.S. as an insecticide. So let me ask you something again, this time a little more directly. If something this accessible, this affordable, and this scientifically validated has been around for that long, why weren't you told to use it? Why isn't it the first recommendation when you search how to get rid of termites fast or best termite treatment for homeowners? Because the answer isn't about effectiveness. It's about visibility. You weren't supposed to notice it. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's too simple. Too cheap. Too permanent. Too independent. And here's the part that most people completely miss. You don't need a license to buy it. You don't need a technician to apply it. And you don't need to renew anything every year. Which means, once you understand how it works, you're no longer dependent on the system built around fixing the problem after it happens. You start preventing it before it ever begins. And that's exactly where things become uncomfortable. Because the moment a solution removes the need for repeat services, it stops being promoted. But this is just the surface. Because the way this powder actually works is far more precise and far more devastating than anything you've been told about traditional termite treatments. What makes this powder different isn't just that it kills termites. It's how it does it, and more importantly, how it spreads. Because if you're picturing something fast, aggressive, and obvious, that's not what's happening here. In fact, The real power of boric acid termite treatment comes from something almost invisible. When a termite moves through a thin layer of this powder, nothing dramatic happens at first. There's no immediate reaction, no warning signal, no instinct to avoid it. That's the first advantage. Because, unlike many chemical treatments, termites don't recognize it as a threat. So they walk through it. And as they do, microscopic particles cling to their body's legs. Antennae, outer shell, tiny crystalline fragments, sharp on a microscopic level, almost like fine glass dust. Now here's where it turns. Termites constantly groom themselves. It's part of how they survive as a colony. So, the moment that termite begins to clean itself, it ingests those particles. And once inside the body, the process begins. The compound disrupts the digestive system. It damages the gut lining. It slowly dehydrates the insect from within. Not instantly, not explosively, but steadily and irreversibly. And if that was all it did, it would still be effective. But this is where things become something else entirely. Because termites don't live alone. They live in tightly connected colonies where food is shared. Contact is constant. And this is the part most people don't realize. They consume the bodies of dead termites. So, when one contaminated termite returns to the colony and dies, it doesn't just disappear. It becomes part of the system again. Other termites feed on it. They ingest the same compound. They carry it further. And just like that, what started with one termite becomes a chain reaction. From one to dozens. From dozens to hundreds. Until the entire colony begins to collapse from the inside. No spraying. No chasing the nest. No direct targeting required. Just transfer. Spread. Elimination. And once that process starts, it doesn't stop easily. So now you're not dealing with a surface level fix. You're triggering something systemic. But here's the question that should be bothering you now. If the mechanism is this efficient, this precise, and this self-spreading, why would anyone replace it with something more expensive and less permanent? If what you just heard sounds too precise to be real, that's exactly why researchers kept testing it. Because a solution that spreads on its own requires no complex equipment and costs just a few dollars shouldn't be this effective. And yet, when scientists actually put boric acid termite control to the test, the results kept coming back the same. In the 1930s, controlled studies in California exposed subterranean termites to borate-treated materials. Within just a few days, entire groups began to die off. Within weeks, large portions of the colony collapsed. Not partially, not inconsistently, completely. And it didn't stop there. When wood was treated with even low concentrations around a 5% solution, termites that attempted to feed on it didn't survive more than a few days. Meanwhile, untreated wood in the exact same environment was heavily consumed. Same conditions, same species, completely different outcomes. Then similar results started appearing in other parts of the world. In Japan, builders began placing borate-treated materials beneath wooden structures. Over time, this approach proved highly effective, even against aggressive termite species known for forming massive colonies. In Australia, research showed that termite activity dropped dramatically when wood was treated properly. In some cases, consumption rates fell to near zero. Let that sink in. From the United States to Asia to Australia, different climates, different termite species, different building methods. And yet, the same pattern repeated. Consistent suppression, reliable protection, long-term effectiveness. And here's what makes this even more unusual. Unlike many modern chemical treatments, termites don't develop resistance to boric acid. Not reduced resistance. Not partial adaptation. Just none. Which means the same method that worked decades ago still works today. No upgrades, no reformulations, No new and improved versions required. So now you're looking at something that is scientifically validated, globally tested, and stable over time. And that should raise a very simple but very uncomfortable question. If the science has been clear for this long, and the results are this consistent, why did this stop being the standard? Because what happened next had nothing to do with science, and everything to do with money. And this is the moment where everything quietly shifts. Because up to this point, what you've seen is straightforward, a low-cost, science-backed termite solution that works, spreads through colonies, and doesn't require constant reapplication. But the second you look at it from a different angle, the entire picture changes. Because if you're running a business, especially one built around termite control services, inspections, and recurring treatments, you have to ask a different question. Not does it work, but what happens if people only need it once? Think about that. If a homeowner can walk into a store, spend $5, apply a simple treatment, and prevent termite damage long term, what happens to the service calls? What happens to the annual inspections? What happens to the contracts that renew year after year? They disappear. And that's not a small problem, because in the United States alone, the pest control industry generates tens of billions of dollars every year. With termite services sitting at the center of that model. We're talking about upfront treatments costing anywhere from $1, 000 to $3. 000, followed by yearly renewals that keep the system running. Predictable, scalable, recurring. That's the kind of model every large industry is built on. Now compare that to a one-time solution that costs less than a fast food meal and can last for years when applied correctly. There's no subscription in that. No repeat billing, no long-term dependency. And here's where things get uncomfortable. Because when a simple solution threatens a high-revenue system, it doesn't always get removed. It gets replaced. Quietly, gradually, not by proving it wrong, but by shifting attention away from it. More complex treatments are introduced. More advanced-sounding systems are marketed. More rules. More licensing. More professional-only frameworks begin to appear. And over time, the original solution doesn't disappear. You just stop hearing about it. It becomes background noise. Something sitting on a shelf, while the spotlight moves somewhere else. So now you're no longer choosing between solutions. You're choosing between what you've been shown and what you haven't. And that leads directly into the next piece of the puzzle, because if this solution faded out of view, what exactly took its place? What replaced it wasn't just a different product. It was an entire system. And once you see how that system works, you start to understand why the simple solution had to fade into the background. Because today, when you search for best termite treatment or call a professional service, you're not offered something simple. You're introduced to a process, inspection, assessment, treatment plan, installation, monitoring, renewal. It feels structured. It feels official. It feels necessary. And to be clear, if these systems do work, there are modern termite bait systems, chemical barriers, soil treatments, all designed to control infestations over time. But here's the difference. They're built around ongoing involvement. Bait stations are placed around your home, then checked every few months. Chemical treatments are applied, then reapplied every few years. Service agreements are signed, then renewed annually. And every step of that process has a cost attached to it. So instead of a one-time solution, you now have a cycle. A system where the problem is managed, but rarely eliminated permanently. Now think about what that means for you. You're not just paying to fix termite damage. You're paying to stay protected, then paying again to maintain that protection. And over time, that adds up often into the thousands. But here's where it gets even more subtle. Because this system isn't just built on products. It's reinforced by rules. In many places, Applying certain termite treatments requires licensed professionals. Specific chemicals can only be handled under regulation. And the messaging is clear. This is too complex to handle on your own. So naturally, you follow the path that's been laid out. You call, you schedule, you trust the process. Meanwhile, the simpler alternative, the one that doesn't require a contract, doesn't require a visit, and doesn't require ongoing payments, never even enters the conversation. Not because it's illegal, not because it doesn't work, but because it was quietly removed from the spotlight. And once something leaves the spotlight, most people stop looking for it. So now the real question isn't just what replaced it. It's whether you actually need that system at all, or if there's still a way to take control of the problem yourself before it ever reaches that stage. Now here's the part that actually puts control back in your hands. Because after everything you've seen, the powder, the science, the global studies, and the system that replaced it, you might be wondering, what can I actually do right now to protect my home? The truth is, prevention has always been simpler than the industry wants you to believe. And that's exactly why this next part is critical. First, there's the light dusting method. A very thin, barely visible layer of boric acid in areas where termites are likely to travel, wall voids, baseboards, cracks near plumbing lines. The key here is subtlety. If you pile it up, termites avoid it. But when it's invisible, they walk through, pick it up on their legs, and the chain reaction starts. Second, you can use a simple liquid solution. Dissolve a small amount of boric acid in warm water and carefully pour or spray it onto exposed wood in crawl spaces, attics, or garages. It penetrates the wood fibers, creating a protective barrier that remains effective for years as long as the wood stays dry. This is especially powerful because termites ingest it directly when attempting to feed. Third, there's the bait approach. Mix boric acid powder with something attractive, like damp cardboard or a touch of honey, and place it strategically where termite activity is suspected. Termites carry it back to the colony, and the self-spreading effect takes over. One contaminated termite can trigger a chain reaction that reaches the entire colony without you having to touch the nest directly. What's important to remember through all of this is that less is more. Overdoing it can backfire. Termites avoid clumps. So the most effective approach is precise, light, and strategic. And here's a little secret that most homeowners never hear. You don't have to rely on expensive professionals for this part. The powder is cheap. The methods are simple. And when applied correctly, you can dramatically reduce your risk before a serious infestation even starts. But here's the mini hook that keeps this interesting. While you now know these strategies exist, very few homeowners actually take action early enough. Most wait until the damage is visible. And by that point, the system the industry promotes has already locked them into years of recurring costs. So the real power isn't just in knowing, it's in acting. And that's exactly what sets you apart from the rest, the people who never knew. And the people who choose to take control before it's too late. And what comes next will reveal why this simple powder could have been the permanent solution all along. If only the spotlight hadn't moved elsewhere. Here's the truth they never wanted you to see. This $1 powder, sitting quietly on a hardware store shelf, has been quietly protecting homes for decades. Its effectiveness is undeniable. Scientific studies from the United States to Japan to Australia confirm it. Entire termite colonies can be stopped before they ever have a chance to destroy your home. And yet, most people never hear about it. Why? Not because it doesn't work. Not because it's dangerous. The reason is much simpler and far more frustrating. It works too well. It removes the need for expensive service calls, long-term contracts, and recurring fees. And in a multi-billion-dollar industry, that's not acceptable. So the spotlight shifted. The simple solution faded into the background, while costly systems and repeat treatments became the standard. But now, you know the truth. And knowing is the first step toward taking control of your home and protecting it before it's too late. You don't need to wait for inspectors, contracts, or expensive treatments. You have the knowledge, and you can act. Prevention is always better than repair. And now you're equipped to make a smart choice. If this video opened your eyes, don't let it disappear in your watch history. Save this video so you can revisit it anytime. And subscribe to the channel to stay informed about more hidden truths and life-changing strategies the industry doesn't want you to know. Share it with friends and family who own homes. Because the more people who know, the less power the system has to keep you in the dark. Remember, the information didn't vanish. It was just buried. And now, it's yours. Use it. Protect your home. And never let something so simple slip past your attention again.